As with any modern game, Warhammer 3 is far from perfect, but it can be brought a lot closer to that mark with the help of mods. There's all kinds of options out there, whether you want to totally rework how every single aspect of the game works, or simply let you zoom your camera around just a little bit closer to the action. So today, let's go through some of my picks for the best quality of life mods for Total War Warhammer 3. But first, be sure to check out Instant Gaming, the sponsor of this video. You like games, right? It would be weird if you watched this video and somehow didn't. Well, then you should check out Instant Gaming, where you can grab all the latest and greatest games at heavily discounted prices on all of your favorite stores and platforms. Rogue Trader for over 50% off, Cyberpunk Ultimate Edition for over 60% off, even brand new releases like Homeworld 3 for over 30% off. Bottom line is almost any game you could ask for at lower prices than you can find almost anywhere else, all from a trustworthy source with reliable customer service. Check out Instant Gaming using the link in the description to get yourself some games for cheap and support the channel while you're at it. Thanks by the way. Also thanks to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Now let's get into these mods. These are in no particular order other than some being put next to each other since they affect the same sorts of things, so I'm not trying to rank these from worst to best or anything. Okay, first up, disable startup splash screens. Starting off with something extremely simple that does exactly what it says in the tin. You know those logos and stuff that play before you get to the main menu of the game that you skip by mashing escape every single time, because why would you ever watch that? Ever? This just skips all that automatically, saving you those key presses. In the grand scheme of things, it changes hardly anything, but it is convenient when you boot in and out of the game a lot, as it really does help lessen the madness. Next up, high resolution UI improvements. Honestly, this is such a goated mod, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to find it. It just scales up a bunch of UI elements that for some reason are tiny in the base game. Recruitment menus in base game are tiny with a scroll bar that's a mile long. This stretches it up to fill up so much more of the screen, and while there is still some scrolling, it's a lot less, and more of a result of factions having so many units rather than a terrible design decision. Ease of use aside, it also just looks better. The diplomacy menu is far better since you're always looking at this part anyway, so why is it normally so compressed into such a small area? It also changes Lord and Hero recruitment screens, view multiple armies pre-battle, spreads out ability icons, and makes the custom battles panel so much larger. All in all, if you're playing the game above 720p, then I would consider this a must-have. It's not perfect, but compared to the base game, it's so much better, and as far as I can tell, has basically no issues or downsides. Next up we have UI improvements. This is a very vaguely named mod, but it really focuses on the settlement building UI. The first part is something that the game already does, but it just makes it a tiny bit more obvious. When you're building or demolishing a building, it changes the colors of the numbers to make it much more obvious what's going on. As I said, this is in the game already, so it isn't entirely necessary, but the second part of this mod adds a nice little touch to your settlement UI. As well as the building changes, the background of the settlement UI is changed to have a nice panoramic image of the landscape, which changes absolutely nothing gameplay wise, but does make the UI just a little bit prettier, which is well worth it to me. Two very small changes that you honestly might not notice, but I just think they look neat. Next up we have Army Carousel. Another UI improvement, and this is to the skill menu / detail screen for your lords and heroes. Normally you just have this big mess up at the top left of the screen showing every single lord and hero in your entire faction. While this is okay at the start, if you're playing well into the late game, you'll be scrolling for hours to find each and every character that you want. What this mod does is add a second carousel to the right, which can be toggled between two modes. Mode 1 shows the army the selected character is in, so you can swap between any lords and heroes in that army with ease. Mode 2 shows all characters of the same type, and this means, say, all amethyst mages or lords. It's a small change, but it just makes it a lot easier to switch between characters and keep them a bit more organized. Moving away from UI, we have climate adaptation. This might be crossing the line of quality of life, but for me this is a great option to pick up if you like painting the map, but feel that you can get boxed in by climate conditions. It pretty much does what it says in the tin. Once you occupy an unpleasant climate, over 25 turns your faction will adapt and those debuffs will lessen until it's just like normal suitable settlements. For uninhabitable, this is extended to 50 turns, so in either case, it's not something that's going to happen instantly. There is another version which speeds this up, but in my opinion, they're probably a little bit too strong. The way the basic mod is balanced, I feel is very reasonable, since you'll still have to build up these settlements slow to start off with, but once you've been in control for long enough, it'll be just like home and reward you for holding it on long enough to adapt. Speaking of which, yes, you need to hold on to the settlement for the full duration, otherwise it will reset, so make sure you keep them safe if you want to keep them at all, since being sent 50 turns back is going to sting no matter how late in the game you are. Next we have building progression icons. Real channel OGs might remember that I mentioned this in my Warhammer 2 mods video about 57 years ago. This is technically preference based rather than something that affects gameplay, but still, I think it improves my games, so I'm including it here. So you know how most buildings have multiple tiers, and in base game, the only way to know what tier you're at is to hover over it or see the numbers? With this mod, they actually have entirely different icons, so you can easily tell at a glance what tier each of your buildings are at. As far as I can tell, this works for every faction and covers almost every building. There are a few exceptions, like the shooting range for the Empire, but for the most part, you're covered. This is a purely visual change, but one that I feel makes the build UI a bit easier to understand, as well as a lot nicer to look at. All of these icons look like they could have been in the base game to begin with, so they don't look out of place and make sense in the context of what we're upgrading. Walls get towers and grow in size, guns get bigger, etc, etc. No performance hit or instability, just cool artwork for buildings. Another extremely simple one, we have auto-resolve quest battles. Extremely simple, does what it says in the tin, it lets you auto-resolve quest battles. Don't get me wrong, some quest battles are fun, but a lot of the time it can force you to manually play through something that you can win with Control A and attack. This lets you have the option to quickly skip past these battles and continue your campaign, free of the couple of loading screens along intermission. Plus, there are some people out there that genuinely don't like the RTS part of Total War as much as the turn-based, so this lets them play how they want without missing out on cool unique items and quests. Unlock all skills is something that some people may consider to be breaking the balance, but I'm going to justify it for a few reasons. What it does is unlock all skills that get locked out when you pick up something else. So for the Master Engineers, normally you choose between Cartographer Innovations and Pigeon Bomb, but now you can get both. Now, I think this is totally okay for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's only skills, and 99% of the time, they're not going to break the balance totally by themselves. Secondly, once you reach the late game, you can have way more skill points than you know what to do with, so why not unlock all these options, particularly for Lords and Heroes that run out before they even hit the skill point maximum. And thirdly, it's a single player game, the balance ain't all that great anyway, so we may as well have some fun and use all the skills that we possibly can. Speaking of skills, we have C Specifics Skill Queue. This is an insanely useful mod, especially if you're playing late into the campaign with a massive amount of armies, lords, and heroes. We all know that by the time you get to this point, you're building the exact same armies the exact same way, with the exact same units, including lords and heroes, leveled up the exact same. And yet, every time they level up, you need to manually assign their skill points into the same slots, adding up to hours of time over the course of a multi-100 turn campaign. Well, no longer. With this mod, you can plan out your entire skill tree all the way from level 1 to the skill cap, and when your characters level up, they'll just auto-assign their points, meaning you can keep playing knowing they're at full power. Best part is, you can then save these assignments and apply them to other lords and heroes. Now obviously, this only works between characters that are the same type and have the exact same skill tree, but still, you can build out one lord or hero and copy their skills across all future versions of themselves and save yourself a ton of time. Wrapping up with a couple of visual mods, we have Guns, Smoke, and Spectacle. This is purely visual, but if you ask me, makes the game look 10 times better with such a minor change. All it does is add smoke effects to Gunpowder units, so they have a lot more oomph when they fire their shots. No stat changes, but these simple effects make battles look leagues better than they did before, and I'm really sad that I only found this when I was searching for this video. For me, this came with no noticeable performance hit, and all the effects look pretty much spot on. Does it change how the battles actually play? No, but it does make them look a lot more cinematic, and let's be honest here, I think that's most of the reason anyone bothers to play Total War manual battles in the first place. And my favourite part about this mod is, unlike some other visual changes that require you to do some external things outside of subscribing on the workshop, you just click subscribe, you enable it in the mod loader, and boom, the changes are there. No extra work whatsoever. I love that. Ultimate Portraits is another purely visual change, and this one is for sure down to personal preference. The mod changes the portraits of all legendary lords from their usual poorly lit 3D models to some more cinematically shot images, and while I personally feel a few of them are a little too cinematically edited, on the whole it's a big improvement. Of course, no gameplay changes, but it does give you something pretty to look at whenever you have a lord portrait on screen, which is basically all the time. Easy to explain, easy to install, and easy to recommend since it's just an image change, so no real risk of conflicts or performance issues. Wrapping up, we have a classic mod, we have Better Camera, and I've been using this bad boy since Warhammer 1. It just improves the controls for the battle camera and allows you to zoom much further out or in than the vanilla camera, and makes getting cool shots during combat far easier. I use this in basically any Warhammer 3 video that shows off units, and I've been using it for years. The zooming in and out without units fading out is the best change by a mile, so you can really get the feeling of being in the middle of a battle and how chaotic it is without having this bubble of safety around you like normal. I never play without this mod, and I likely never will. It's not really essential unless you want to get some cool shots in game, but if you're even remotely interested in getting up close and personal during battle, then this is the camera mod that I would recommend. And those are some of my favourite quality of life mods for Total War Warhammer 3. Let me know if you have any that I missed that you enjoy in your game, and I'd love to add them to my list and make my game even more unstable. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 mod videos, then check out this video on the Necromancy mod.